Tim Singer, along with Team USA's Brittany Arndt, event number 6 on the EBERSPÄCHER Luge World Cup as we get set for the second run for both the men and the women's in this World Cup doubles competition. Almost perfect conditions, at least compared to the last couple of days. The temperature sitting right around freezing, the ice a little below freezing, no precipitation at the moment. And the humidity, Brittany, about as low as we've had this week.
Yeah. We've had a rough week of training and lots of snow and rain and a mix of both. So it's good to see, a clear day. Not sunny, but clear.
Men will come up first. All but one of the sleds, one Austrian team crashed, but the rest of them all made it into run number 2. So I believe we have 18 qualified here, and they will count them down from the slowest time to the fastest time. You'll see that start list in a moment, and when you do look more carefully at the right side of your screen, that's where the split times will come up. But before that, let's celebrate the top 3. Not a big surprise with any of them, was it, Brittany?
No, not at all. It's good to see a Latvian team up there in the top 3, but yeah, it's no surprise to see the 2 Germans on top.
The Tobys are in second. Slow dissolve to Egert-Benneken, the current leaders, as they look for World Cup victory number 54. That would put them 6 ahead of Wendel and Arlt. Those are the 2 winningest teams in the history of the World Cup. There are the right side of your screens. When we have 10 all within a half second, as you see Rita Keinswaldner back in the 10th place position, and then the rest of them, it gets very tight. There could be some shuffling among the top 3, potentially among the top 5 or 6, but realistic, Brittany, that would take not fast driving, but a mistake or 2.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's very likely that we see someone in the top 5 make a mistake. This track can be challenging. We have a few tough transitions. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Huang and Peng, the first of 2 consecutive teams from the People's Republic of China. They've been around all season long, and while some teams notably missed portions of the World Cup, Ukraine comes to mind for sure, the Chinese have been there plugging along, every stop every week, which is great.
Yeah, and I believe if I remember correctly, they had a pretty solid first run. It's just maybe the sled setup isn't there this week, or they're just still fighting for that time. But I mean, a clean run in Altenberg is pretty good.
And it's not too much to say that the coaches sometimes in the developing nations purposely set up the sled to not necessarily be the fastest one on track that day.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see safer setups, maybe with more inexperienced athletes, depending on conditions and whatnot. But yeah, so safer setup isn't typically as fast, but it just depends on the athlete, I guess. I can imagine their sleds are set up pretty safe, though.
Training wheels, if you will.
Yeah,
Yep.
As much as you could get on a racing sled.
126.944 is the 2 heat combined time. Their finish time of 43.294 was 4/10 faster than their first run.
It's pretty good. Maybe we'll see some faster times.
But as you said, no threat to the track record. I mean, the leading first run time by Egert-Benneken was still 0.8 of a second slower than their track record.
Yeah, I don't see us touching the track record today for the men.
A little bit of an unstraight line for the next Chinese team of Jubai and Hui out of the start. But they hold about a 400ths advantage over their teammates entering the run, and they've opened that up already.
Yeah, they had a good correction at the start, though, and made it into the start curve clean, so that's important for them, especially, they're going from farther down on the track, so it's, they have less time to make it up. Looking really solid, though. Head is up a little bit, but body looks comfortable other than that. A little bit of a skid there into 16. I don't think it's going to cost them much, though.
This is where they head uphill, and they open up their lead over the other Chinese team by 4/10 of a second, rather. Kreisels are the name of the game this year on the European swing. Virtually all of the tracks have a Kreisel. Innsbruck, Sigulda, and Oberhof have those Finnish Kreisels. We've got the one here. Winterberg's got the famous Veltins Kreisel. Only St. Moritz, in terms of the North American tracks, do not have that 180 or 270 or 360 degree turn. Are those difficult to master?
It depends on the track. So Eagles is typically pretty simple. It's not
pretty
super
slow,
challenging.
though, still
Yeah,
for
it's
you at that
slow
point.
for the women. This Kreisel can be challenging. If you don't get under that first pressure right away, it can be hard to get it back, and then you'll see a huge loop. It's, you know, hard to get it back under control then, but yeah, those Finnish curve Kreisels in Sigulda and Oberhof can be really challenging because you're going so fast and there is so much pressure. So it's common to see hitting afterwards, but yeah, little mistake there, little hit there at right after the start there for these guys. So.
And these guys are representing the Czech Republic, and if you have never been to Altenberg, and I don't know why you wouldn't have, we are one town away from the Czech Republic border. The other side of town, actually, on the south, is the Czech Republic.
Yeah, it's not that far of a drive to Prague. We usually go there on the day off.
It's a great city.
Yeah. They had a little mistake in 11-12, but staying really chill and keeping it together. And
found the green
yeah,
at the end.
made up quite a bit of time.
And not only that mistake in 11 and 12, as you alluded to, they got knocked around a little bit on the start curve, curve 7.
Yeah, they had some issues there. They hit before 8, so that's a lot of time. It's good for them to still come down in first. Yeah, you can see they hit the short wall and just picked up on the exit. So, yeah, that's tough.
GTS, those are the booties. And as we get ready for the Romania team of Honderek and Molcha, I can tell you that it's been a decent season for them. Haven't done a lot of doubles. They finished 18th at the opener in Innsbruck, but they did compete last week at the World Championships. The booties are an interesting part of your outfit because they need to be skin tight. I always see the athletes unzip it right when you cross the finish line, which leads me to believe it's not the most comfortable piece of clothing, but a necessary one.
Big hit out of 9, all the way into Kreisel. And see, this is where you'll see the pressures. So they're going up all the way, up and down. So that's tough.
They've slowed down enough where they should avoid any further problems, but they've given it all away.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, the booties, they're tight. You know, sometimes I'll see people walking around with them zipped up, but I'm one of those athletes that unzips them right away. I don't like walking with them zipped up. It's also just, they're expensive. We don't get a lot of them. If you break the zipper, that's rough. So.
Are they uniform, or do you have to adhere to a standard as you do with a sled? Yeah,
well, so it's the same type of thing with the helmet. So it's kind of like issued by the FIL. We buy them from the supplier that everyone buys them from the same person. We have to wear those ones because they're a sponsor. So yeah, but nobody else is making luge booties.
Right.
So it's our only option. Yeah, you can see they had a big mistake there. That's where all their time went.
There was a big controversy at the 1998 Olympics, which was when you were 4 weeks old or something. And, and that involved George Hackl, the 3-time gold medalist, in his booties, and there was some protest that they were illegal. I don't know any more beyond that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, like we wouldn't be able to wear, we used to wear Adidas booties. We can't wear those anymore, but...
Kellogg and Sager from the United States, as we talked about in run number 1, they did not qualify for the World Championship weekend, but here they are back, and they are in 14th place after run number 1.
Yep, great to see these boys back on the sled. Big height at the exit of Kreisel. This is the same mistake they made in the first round, but handled it much better than they did the first round, so that's good.
Pair of 8th place finishes at the Park City track, the only American race on the World Cup this year, and they're still skidding here between 15 and 16.
Big pickup on the exit of 15, and yeah, that's tough.
And such a big lead, despite more mistakes than we've seen, or as many, leads me to believe that the sled's okay. that the equipment is doing its job, and they just need to get to know the track a little better.
Yeah. I mean, we trained here in the fall, but we actually our sleds all got lost. We had 2 sessions, so it's tough for us coming from North America, not getting a whole lot of training on these difficult tracks. But, you know, they're great sliders. It's just going to come with more experience and time. It's a tough track from double start. I think lady start is much easier. These areas are harder, are more difficult with less speed.
Canadians in the house, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you're watching, listening, the Canada program culminated a huge rebuilding with those Olympic medals in 2018, then a lot of retirements. I'm not sure Canada has been on the podium, at least other than the relay, since the 2018 Olympic Games. These 2 came close, as we mentioned, with a 4th in Whistler. Someone please let me know if there was a podium performance on the World Cup or World Championships other than that.
I'm actually not sure, but yeah, they're great sliders. They were so close in Whistler. Oh, big hit and skid at the 415. Yeah, Whistler that would have been really cool to see them.
Absolutely, and in front of their mentors, Walker and Smith,
Yep.
who did win that Olympic silver in the relay and had a couple of 4ths on their own at the Olympic Games. So the Canadians are out in front of the United States, 3,800s in front, holding on to their spot at worst.
Yeah, they'll be bummed about that mistake. Just this is where the track comes uphill, so it can be really tough. And if you just come over too early to 15 and you hit that wall, it's just, yeah, you're skidding, and it's good that wasn't a crash. But.
Again, if you have questions or comments, you can find us on Twitter at Luge Announcer, or email us luge.announcer@gmail.com, or send a letter by mail, and it'll get to us in time for next year's World Championships here in Saxony. And unfortunately, the comments you're putting on the YouTube live feed we're not able to see, because here in Germany, the live feed is blocked. Okay, on we go now with the Austrians. You may be surprised to see Stoy and Kohler back in 12th place after run number 1, because they won this event last year en route to an Olympic bronze medal.
No.
And they have a big problem at the start. Is that trying too hard to make up for the first run?
They just hit the wall, and I mean, they were on their side, I believe. That's rough. That's so hard. One of our old coaches used to say, if you hit at the start, you might as well sit up and brake, get out of the track. But that's hard. The only thing is, after that type of mistake, you can just lay down the best run of your life, and maybe it won't make a difference, but at least you can have a good run after that.
Well, that victory last year in Altenberg was 1 of 10 over the past 3 seasons for this duo, but this has been, on balance, a forgettable post-Olympic season for Stoy and Kohler, who have only been on the podium once. They'll likely be in last or near last today. They'll be out of the top 15. And I guess, Brittany, if there's any season you're going to do it, it's going to be the one right after the Olympics?
Yeah. I mean, it's better than doing this, having a tough year last year. But, yeah, you see they just hit that left wall. They just turned the sled way too early and hit early. And, yeah, on the side. And then it looked like Stoy almost just sat up and was, done.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, they're definitely having a tough time, and they're going to be excited to get out of here, I think, and go to Winterberg next week.
Now Verchak and Zami. Their results this year have been incredibly consistent. 13th, 14th, 15th, 14th, 13th. And then they had a 10th place finish at the first Sigulda World Cup.
Yeah, they're another pair of great sliders. They, I think have just struggled a bit finding the race runs, putting 2 runs together, but great sliders, great guys, strong athletes. So a little early there on 12, and that pushed them, but handled it really nicely and didn't have a skid really in 13, which can be really not fun. 3,800ths is their advantage over Canada.
keeping in mind they go from the slowest to the fastest. So if you've got a good advantage going in, that of course helps in your mission to stay in your spot or even move up a few. And there's no sprint this weekend, so the top 15 is not the bubble. Or last week the World Championships, that was interesting, Brittany, where they do cut the field down for the second run. A little stressful.
Yeah, it is a little stressful if you're, going to make it in or not, but yeah, see a little too early to 12 there. But, it's interesting to see who makes it in. Oberhof is a tough track for a lot of people, and it's hard to find speed there. So it was an interesting, second run of the race.
Here are Wojtek and Kuba, the Polish doubles team, as we make our way to the top 10, the final 10. They were in 10th after run number 1. Pretty nice advantage already over the leading Slovakians down at the bottom. They have about a 0.3 of a second edge. Let's talk track for just a second. Where do you rank Altenberg in terms of difficulty? And I know it differs from athlete to athlete, but where does this one sit?
I would say it's one of the more difficult tracks. It's all personal. Everyone has their own opinions. I don't think Lake Placid is super difficult, but you talk to someone else and it's the hardest track ever. So for me, it is difficult. I had a lot of training here as a junior, but women's start is hard and it's fast, and I've only heard that about men's start too. So I would say it's in the top 5 more difficult tracks.
Polish team into the lead. They open up another 10th on Slovakia here. Chmielewski and Kovalevsky with 9 remaining.
Yeah, they had a pretty solid run. They're a great team. They train with the Germans, so they have a lot of good insight on these tracks. I'm sure that helps them a lot. Little skid there out of 9, but handled it so well. Just tossed the head back, and yeah, great entrance into Kreisel.
Crowd filling up. In the background, they love their luge here in Saxony. This region will host the World Championships in luge for the 3rd time late next year. Previous Worlds were held in 1996 and 2012. Now Italy, Emanuel Rida, Simon Keinswaldner. They had a 42.616 in run number 1.
Yeah, they had some mistakes. I believe in 11-12 their first run, if I remember correctly. So they'll be looking to clean that up and just, throw down a run that they can be happy with.
Hear that Papa band in the background around the Kreisel. You'd think we were at the Veltins Kreisel in Winterberg. They know how to celebrate luge here. There's always a party.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, this looks really solid. They look so comfortable. Really good run.
To the finish, that's the red line. 124.796. Their 42.18 was quite a bit better, about a half second faster than their first run. So that 42.18, let's see where that would have put them in the first heat. That would have put them in 2nd place, is that right?
Yeah. I think we're going to see a little faster time to second run here, but their run was much better.
And you don't see that on a lot of tracks, and it does somewhat depend on the conditions, but credit Icemeister Rolf Menda, who is doing a great job. When you can see times faster in the second run, someone's doing their job right.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, that 11-12 transition was solid.
Jonas Aramunda, Paula Gubitz, the first of 3 from Germany. The other 2 will be the last 2 we see, as this team has 1 podium finish early in the season, a 3rd. As I mentioned, they had a relatively disappointing 9th place last week at the World Championships on their home track. And when you have not 1, but probably up to 4 other young German teams trying to be that 3rd sled on the World Cup, you probably feel the pressure every week.
Yeah, I believe the German team is kind of racing off every week. If I understand that correctly, I don't know how it works after World Championships, but I know up until then they're kind of racing off for those spots. So it is hard to be that third sled. I know what it's like. It's not easy. So yeah, or that fourth sled in the women's case. But yeah, I mean, they're great athletes. They're just trying to find their groove, and I think they look better and better every week, but probably felt a little pressure at home for World Championships.
42.17, so that's right in that window that the Italians just were in, and they move out ahead of Italy, but it totally confirms what you said, Brittany, that this track is getting faster. Probably not a threat to the track record, but everyone, if they do it right, they'll have a faster time here, run number 2. Love that.
Yeah, it's always good.
Yeah.
Especially for maybe people that haven't slid here a whole lot. You can work on beating your personal best time, which is always great. But yeah, it looks like they cut a little ice out of 11 into 12, but stayed super calm and handled that well. That home track is showing.
Second American sled coming up now, Zach DiGregorio and Sean Hollander. They are bunched together. They were just ahead of the Germans, but just behind Italy. So this could work either direction, depending on how this run goes. Their 7th place after run number 1 matches their World Championship finish and is a sign that this still young American team is becoming more and more consistent every week.
Yeah, they're getting more and more comfortable on the sled. It's cool to see them find their rhythm and their groove. You know, they did go to the Olympics and they were that team last year, but they still only have room to improve, so it's good. Little direction out of Kreisel, but wow, they handled that
and
so
we saw
well.
Dana and Duncan have great speed down at the bottom despite clear mistakes. So this could still could turn green, but they're losing a little more time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they can gain at the bottom, but the Germans also went pretty fast, so they did fall back.
They actually fell back quite a bit. And it wasn't, did you notice any mistakes? Maybe a couple of corrections?
Yeah, they had a little skid on the exit of Kreisel. They just kind of came away from 11, and that is kind of a lot of time because then they're fighting it, and they're really fighting the pressure in 11 to get over to 12. So while maybe it didn't look like a lot, they're working a lot on the sled, which is just costing time.
Friction.
Yeah, exactly. And it's better than a crash or hitting the wall, but still time.
These two will keep up their perfect record of representing the USA in the relay. That'll be tomorrow, but not before Zach also sits in your chair tomorrow, Brittany, and gets a little debut announcing work.
Yeah, I think he's excited to get out here and call a race. It'll be fun.
Now, Rieder and Rassner. Great to see them as the top-placing Italian team right now because they, despite being the veteran Italian team, have been second and sometimes third fiddle on this program. So let's see if they can keep it in the top 5. And this, do you know what's going on with Nagla and Malaya? We haven't seen them.
I believe that Ivan has an injury in his hand or something. I'm not positive, but yeah, I think in Segulda he got hurt.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
3 Italian teams, all of whom have been on the podium at various times in their career.
Yeah, and they're very talented. Another younger team, I think they're around my age. So it's a bummer to see them not here.
Falling 2 spots back ahead of the Americans, but behind Germany and Italy. So maybe, Brittany, when we were looking at those fast times by those 2 sleds, that wasn't the trend, but that was just 2 great runs.
Yeah, and you know, it could be a sled setup. It could just be they were more relaxed. You know, Rieder Keinswaldner had some issues the first run, so when that happens, you're kind of able to throw down a really good second run because you don't have a whole lot of pressure. So clean it up and throw it down, but their run looked good and they look relaxed on the sled, so I don't know. Sometimes you don't know with luge, you know? Sled, athlete, ice.
Exactly. The track.
Yep.
Okay, quoting our good friend Billy Shakespeare, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. That's been the season for this Austrian duo, Mueller and Frauscher. During the worst of times, they've been in 11th place, 13th place, had a DNS. during the best of times, they had 2 podiums the opening weekend, and more to the point, 2 podiums last week at the World Championships in Oberhof. In fact, between Yannick and his brother Jonas, they had 4 World Championship medals. Not a bad weekend for the family.
Yeah, not at all. Great brother duo, and little tap there out of 9. You know, it's hard to say. Sometimes I swear these guys hit walls and go faster. So you never know, but it's probably going to cost them. They're bleeding already.
Down to 5 thousandths now in the red. We have only a couple of times seen red turn to green, and they're still tight within 200s here. So it's really what the Germans did down here at the bottom.
Yeah, and it's what they can do at the bottom too. I mean, if the sled is running, and honestly, like with that mistake, that's pretty good.
100th up on the Italians, but 500s back. So it's Germany, Austria, 2 from Italy, and then the USA. That's the top 5 with 4 remaining here at the Altenberg track.
Yeah, they'll probably be bummed about that tap out of 9, but I mean, they honestly didn't lose that much time.
This is the 30th time Altenberg has hosted a World Cup race. And if you know the sport, you know basically if you have an operating track in Germany, you're going to get a World Cup, and maybe 2.
Or 4.
Well, the country will get 4. A track may get 2.
Yeah.
As Winterberg will over the next 3 weeks. Now we have a pair of Latvian teams battling against one another. They're separated by a 10th of a second. They're both young teams. Sheviks, Mikolas Sheviks, and Krost, the first to go.
Yeah, they're a great team, but they're young. Do you know how old they are?
I'll look it up.
Oh, mistake out of 9.
Young 20s.
Yeah, feet down out of 9. Hopefully that won't cost them a whole lot.
They were part of the U23 competition last week,
right?
Won by the Americans.
Other than that mistake out of 9, they're looking pretty good and comfortable. Like I said earlier, sometimes when you make a mistake, you can just kind of throw down the rest of the run because you have nothing to lose, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
5th place, I mean, within a 10th, but that just shows how tentative, or how tight, rather, the timing is. And again, little mistakes adding up.
Yeah, and I mean, the top 5 is within a 10th, so that was he had his feet down, so considering that, it's not bad, I don't think.
We are 1 team away from a potential sneaking out of nowhere possible Germany sweep, because Germany still leads the way, and I'm not sure that's happened in doubles in a while. We saw that fairly regularly last week with the women, but you got to credit the young Germans, Orlamunder and Kubitz, who still lead the way with 3 sleds remaining. The Latvians getting ready at the top, last second imagery, and then we have the 2 great German teams.
Yeah, Orlamunder Kubitz had a solid second run, so, you know, this could bring them up, but you never know. Botsplum can throw down right here.
Olympic bronze medalists and World Championship bronze medalists, both in team relay, as the great Schicks brothers, 3-time Olympic medalists, retired after last year, and they retired on top. They didn't make the relay at the Olympics. They had a subpar Olympics, but they won most of their World Cup victories over their last couple of seasons.
Yeah, great team, and now they're both involved in the sport still, so that's great to see.
You would think, I would have thought they'd walk away. They've got their families, they've spent all these years, but no.
Yeah,
coaching
just used to being on the road, I think.
Yeah. Well, the Latvians are looking good for their chance at the podium here. They're going to need to make a big mistake, and that's not going to happen here in the final few curves. Sensational run for Bots and Plume as Martins and Roberts capture a podium position. They negate a potential Germany sweep. We still have 2 remaining, so a good showing for them. Their 4th time on the podium this season.
Yeah, great run. They're going to be so happy with that. I mean,
that'll put them safely into third place in the overall points. They won't catch Wendel and Egert, but they were just behind Gott and just ahead of Stoy, and those Austrian teams struggled today.
Yeah. It's good to see. Yeah, solid run. Just sled is looking great. Robati, that's their team name.
What is it?
Robati.
Robati.
That's their, they've got like sweatshirts and hats and everything.
Now the Tobys, Wendel and Alt. They hold an advantage over the Latvians, 0.06 of a second. And maybe more importantly, they're just 0.03 behind the other German teams still to come.
Sie müssen sich verbessern gegenüber des ersten. Startzeit 5,7.
When you know a track and you're comfortable with a track, that's what, at least half the battle?
Yeah.
Going into the run?
Yes, 100%. When you just know the lines, your body can do it without thinking about it. That's everything, because then you can relax and just let the sled fly. And I'm sure that, you know, they're at a point where they can do that in a lot of places, but especially at home in Germany.
Incredible lines. They were 42.200. Here they're 42.024, 0.2 of a second better. That would have been a winning time in run number 1. We will wait to see if it's a winning time here in run number 2.
Yeah, great run. Some mistakes off the exit of 17, but I don't think that cost them much time.
The rivalry continues. Another week, another showdown. The Tobys and Egert Bennigan. They're still to come, but this looked pretty darn good.
Yeah. So comfortable on the sled. You can get away with so much. They didn't have much, like really any mistakes, but when you are comfortable, if something isn't perfect, you can make it work.
Now grabbing the handles is Tony Egert. Right behind him, holding the straps on Tony's arms, Sascha Bennigan. Last week they captured their 5th world title. They have 53 World Cup wins, 6-time overall champions. A win here will move them into the World Cup lead and give them their 54th victory.
54, that is a lot.
They've had the advantage of having the sprint competition to pad their numbers, but they have clearly been the best on the World Cup for the past 6 or 7 years.
Little early to 12, but again, it was no problem.
Could be tight. It was 0.05 of a second, the differential. Now they come across the finish line skidding, but winning by 0.06, 124.158. Tony Egert and Sascha Bennigan. This is victory number 54 on the World Cup. And looking at the points, I believe that will give them a 1-point advantage over the Tobys heading into Winterberg. This rivalry, the best in the sport, just continues every week.
Yeah, they do just get better and better. Little early to 12 there, but not a problem at all.
Tony Egert and Sascha Bennigan. A great showing. Doesn't matter the track. Their victories this year have come in Canada, in the United States, and in Germany. They were shut out in Austria and Latvia, but they'll look to add to it in Winterberg and in Switzerland in St. Moritz. Those, a look at the final results. Germany 1-2-4, Latvia 3rd, and Mueller-Frauscher come on nicely in the second run, and as a result of that, they could move up into the 4th place position in the World Cup points. The USA places 1 in the top 10 as Wardrop and Zajanski end up in 12th for Canada. Canada with a full complement of disciplined athletes. They have a young man on hand this weekend again, so we should see them in the relay.
Yeah, I think now that the junior races are over, we're seeing a few more of those athletes come up, which is good for those teams that don't have full teams.
Between these three teams, 18 podiums so far in the World Cup. 6 races down, 3 still to come. Actually, 4 races still to come because Winterberg will also have the sprint. And the luxury that they have in this German program, Brittany, that you don't have is the Tobys, by not qualifying for the relay, they can hop in their car and go home tonight.
Yeah, that is really nice. I wish I could just go home for a day or two and come back for the next week, but yeah, I was talking to them in Sigulda actually, and they asked when we were going home, and Wendell was like, oh, that is such a long season.
It is a long season, and what can you do? You got to suck it up and say 7 weeks in Europe, I'm going to embrace it.
Exactly.
I'm going to find a laundromat and enjoy myself.
Yep.
There are the World Cup points. Now, these reflect the 2 heat races, not the overall with the sprints added in, which we'll see in a moment. That was what I was referring to, but I'll look at all of those teams, then we'll hand out some flowers, and we'll show you the overall World Cup. So again, these sprint events, and there are only 4 of them, actually 3, they count as full World Cup points. And here we are, the overall, as projected, 1-point advantage, Egert Beneken over Wendell Art. And then the Latvians and the 2 Austrians actually should stay there in 4th place with a big 0 today. And a look at all of the teams that will be vying for the Joska Crystal, the small Joska Crystal, that goes to the sprint champion, and their World Cup final points. Let's see what we're doing here in terms of the women's doubles. It's about actually 7 or 8 minutes away, so no reason to talk our way through it, but enjoy the pictures. And Brittany and I will be right back on live here for the second and final run of the women's doubles in just a few minutes.